Okay, let's dive in. You shared a really interesting stack of sources with us. We've got articles, some research, and a piece looking specifically at this company, YESHUA,
That's right.
all pointing towards, well, the massive world of the fashion industry.
Yeah, it's huge.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack all this material. We want to figure out how we can actually build a unique personal style, something that feels authentic to us, while also making choices that line up with sustainable values. What's the real story behind fashion's environmental footprint?
Yeah.
Is a more conscious approach really possible?
It's such a critical area, and the numbers in these sources, well, they immediately tell you why. The scale of the current industry model is, frankly, alarming.
Alarming is maybe an understatement. The reports here start with the fact that just, wow, hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
When we talk about the reality of fast fashion, get this. 92 million tons of clothing ended up in landfills or incinerated just in 2023.
92 million tons. It's almost impossible to visualize that amount, isn't it? Totally.
But one source gives us this really vivid, kind of terrible image. It's the equivalent of a garbage truck full of textiles being discarded every single second.
Wow.
Think about that visual, constantly, around the clock.
Every single second. It paints such a clear picture of this take, make, dispose mentality that drives so much of the industry.
Exactly.
And it's not just materials ending up in the trash, right?
Yeah.
It's money, too. A lot of money.
Absolutely. The sources really underscore the immense financial waste that's just built into this overproduction model. You see examples like LVMH reporting $3.5 billion in unsold inventory just last year, 2023.
3.5 billion.
And it's not ancient history either. Remember Burberry back in 2018? They admitted to burning $36.5 million worth of unsold stock.
Burning perfectly good clothes. It still feels unbelievable, even though we know it happened. Just to, protect brand value or avoid sales?
Well, the logic, I guess, is rooted in maintaining this kind of artificial scarcity, or maybe avoiding devaluation through discounting. But the consequence is just staggering waste.
Yeah. And the European Environment Agency data in the material. It confirms this pattern globally. It states that 21% of textile garments go unsold every year.
Wow, 1/5.
And in Europe specifically, it could be up to 594,000 tons destroyed before they're even worn.
Before anyone even tries them on.
Yeah. These numbers just highlight how fundamentally inefficient and, wasteful the current system often is.
Okay, so that's the pretty stark reality. But the sources also pivot, right? They point to a counter movement, this rise of sustainable fashion. What does that actually mean, though, based on the material we have? It's got to be more than just using, eco-friendly fabrics.
Oh, much more. The definition provided is actually quite holistic. It covers not just environmentally responsible materials, but also, ethical production practices, making sure there's fair labor throughout the supply chain, and actively working to minimize the environmental impact across the garment's entire life cycle.
The whole thing, from design to disposal.
Exactly.
And the market seems to be, noticing. There's a McKinsey report cited here that suggests sustainable fashion is projected for pretty significant growth, 8–10% annually.
It does seem that way. It signals a real shift, maybe in consumer demand or just awareness. People are looking for alternatives.
Yeah.
And this is where the sources introduce us to a company like YESHUA. It's presented as, actively challenging that wasteful, outdated model.
Wow.
By championing on-demand manufacturing.
Okay, on-demand manufacturing. How does that actually work in practice, according to these sources? And how does it specifically counter that fast fashion model we were just talking about?
Well, the fundamental principle is pretty straightforward. Creating products only when a customer had already purchased them.
Okay, so instead of guessing what people might want and then making millions of things,
right,
they wait until someone actually says, yes, I want that specific thing.
Exactly. The sources explain YESHUA achieves this by combining their own in-house production capabilities with a large distributed network of print houses. And this setup is key because it lets them avoid needing those enormous warehouses filled with speculative inventory, which, as we just discussed, is where so much waste and cost comes from in the traditional model.
Right, the guessing game inventory. That makes perfect sense from a waste reduction angle.
Yeah.
And the material provides some specific measurable achievements from their suppliers, right? Showing the impact of this kind of operational choice.
Yeah, it moves beyond just the concept to actual tangible metrics.
Like what?
Things like calculating their total GHG emissions, which came out to 90,202 metric tons of CO2 equivalent, or fully mapping and analyzing their facilities' waste streams to, find the problem areas.
Okay, practical stuff.
And sourcing 39% of their electricity from renewable energy. These are concrete steps you see mentioned.
And they're also emphasizing local production too, aren't they? Which must cut down on shipping emissions.
Precisely. The sources highlight that 93% of orders from their partner facilities are produced and delivered within the same country.
And 93%, that's high.
Yeah, and 86% of their in-house orders are fulfilled within the same region where they're being delivered.
Okay.
They've also apparently made a point of establishing eco-friendly alternatives for all their best sellers and conducted energy audits to find ways to become even more efficient.
It really sounds, based on how the sources describe it, like this isn't just some marketing angle for them. It seems like it's baked into their operational structure.
Well, the piece on YESHUA specifically says this commitment to sustainability is woven into the very fabric of how the company operates. So yeah, it's presented as integral to their business model.
Okay, so we see the huge problem with the global system. And here's an example of a different business model trying to address it. How does all this connect back to us? Sitting here thinking about our own closets and trying to craft a personal style that feels both authentic and responsible.
Right. This is where the macro meets the micro, isn't it? Fashion is inherently about self-expression. And the sources connect these ideas of conscious business practices back to our conscious consumer choices. It's about making decisions about what you wear that reflect not just who you are, but also, what you value.
And the material suggests one way to do this is by intentionally choosing unique pieces, not just grabbing the latest trend.
Yes, exactly. Instead of just buying whatever's trendy and, cheap, look for items that have a story or some distinctive character.
Like what kind of things?
Maybe something handcrafted or with a unique cut, a special color, or made from those environmentally responsible fabrics we mentioned earlier. The sources give examples like shoes crafted from recycled materials.
Okay.
Or maybe a top dyed with natural plant-based pigments, things like that.
So pieces that feel special, that you actually want to keep for a long time.
Yeah.
Not disposable.
Precisely. The emphasis in the sources is really on building a wardrobe that transcends those fleeting cycles of fast fashion trends. You're sort of curating an enduring collection. One that resonates with your identity and your commitment to sustainability rather than constantly chasing the next new thing.
Okay, another very practical tip the sources mention is building a capsule wardrobe.
Yeah.
How does that fit into this whole sustainable approach?
Well, it's all about intentionality and versatility, really. The idea is to have a core collection of essential items that are high quality, pretty timeless, and crucially, easy to mix and match.
Makes sense.
The sources suggest starting simply maybe like 3 tops, 2 bottoms, 1 outerwear piece, and then mindfully add sustainable options into that core.
Yeah.
It just encourages you to be thoughtful about each purchase and gets maximum use out of fewer items, which is inherently a more sustainable practice than, constant impulse buying.
And when choosing those core pieces, or any pieces really, the sources make it super clear that the fabric itself is a big deal.
Oh, it's absolute fundamental. The fabric choice impacts pretty much everything from the environmental footprint of production to how long the garment will actually last you. YESHUA's commitment, according to the sources, includes prioritizing eco-friendly options. Things like organic cotton, vegan leather, recycled fibers.
Organic cotton, for example, the source highlights the benefits from like avoiding harmful pesticides, promoting healthier soil and water systems compared to conventional cotton.
Exactly. Opting for these materials is a direct way you can reduce your environmental impact with each purchase you make. But, sustainability isn't just about buying differently.
Oh yeah, what else?
It's also crucially about how we care for the clothes we already own, extending their life.
Ah, good point. Which the sources also provide guidance on, I remember seeing.
They do. Following tailored care instructions for different fabrics, that's key. Gentler laundering, like using less water, cooler temperatures, maybe less harsh detergents that prolongs the life of the garment.
Okay.
And simple things like air drying instead of machine drying. That saves energy and it's much gentler on the fibers themselves. It's really about respecting the resources that went into making the clothes in the first place.
Right, treating them well so they last. Okay, so we've talked main garments, but what about the finishing touches? Accessories and footwear are pretty big parts of personal style, too.
For sure. And they offer another really good opportunity to make conscious choices. The sources point out how accessories can elevate an outfit while still aligning with sustainable values.
Hmm.
You don't necessarily need a lot. Choose pieces with impact.
Like what kind of examples do they give in those sources?
They mention things like vibrant scarves, minimalist leather bracelets. Oh, and a beautifully crafted bracelet made from recycled metals.
Recycled metals. Interesting.
Yeah, and that last one is highlighted because it can literally become a conversation starter about your eco-conscious choices.
That's a great point. Your style can actually open up dialogue. And sustainable footwear. What about that?
Equally important. The sources emphasize choosing shoes crafted from, again, recycled materials or maybe manufactured through low-impact processes. Footwear is often a significant investment in your wardrobe, so making a sustainable choice there really kind of completes that conscious approach to your personal style.
Okay, makes sense. Finally, the sources highlight the role of community in all of this. Why is that important? It seems like such a personal thing, style.
Well, what's really interesting is how sharing this journey, even just talking about it, makes it richer somehow.
How so?
Connecting with others who also care about sustainable fashion can spark new style ideas you hadn't thought of. And it provides support, reinforcing your own practices. It turns what could feel like just an individual effort into more of a shared movement.
Okay. How do the sources suggest finding that kind of community? Where do you look?
They recommend looking for, say, online fashion forums that focus specifically on sustainability, or participating in local workshops or events if they're available in your area, and just actively seeking out online communities centered around these shared values.
So online groups, local meetups maybe?
Yeah, it fosters a sense of connection and kind of shared purpose.
It sounds like it provides both inspiration and maybe a little bit of accountability too.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so summing up this whole deep dive, based on the sources you shared, crafting a unique personal style through sustainable choices like the approach highlighted with YESHUA,
Yeah.
it's really this powerful blend, isn't it? It's self-expression and positive environmental impact.
Absolutely. And every individual choice you make, it does hold real weight. It helps nudge the massive fashion industry towards a more ethical and sustainable future, even if it feels small sometimes.
Yeah, it adds up. And thinking back to that initial image, that garbage truck of textiles every single second, considering the scale of that waste and then the potential of models like on demand,
Yeah.
it really leaves you wondering, doesn't it?
About what?
Well, like,
Yeah.
what other areas of our lives could benefit from applying that kind of on-demand thinking? Or, how can our individual purchasing decisions truly aggregate to drive industry-wide change at the scale that's really needed?
Big question.
Yeah. And what does it really mean to build a style that resonates, beyond just the clothes in your closet? Lots to consider there.